the hidden enemy within. Have you ever felt it? That quiet ache inside your chest, the one you never speak of? It's the moment when the room is full of people, yet you still feel like a ghost. It's the smile you force when deep down your heart trembles. It's the silence you keep, not because you are strong, but because you are terrified of being truly seen. That's the invisible wound of a weak mindset. And it's not just a wound, it's a thief. It steals your joy before you even taste it. It destroys love before it has a chance to bloom. It whispers lies into your heart until you start to believe that you are not enough, that you never were, and maybe never will be. This is why people break quietly. Not because the world crushed them in one violent blow, but because inside their own mind, their strength leaked away drop by drop until they had nothing left to hold on to. I know this pain. Maybe you do too. The weak mindset is not about failure in the world. It is about failure in the soul. It is the way you sabotage your own happiness. It is how you destroy yourself with your own hands, long before life ever raises its fist against you. And what makes it so cruel is that no one sees it happening. People will see you smile, laugh, and talk, but they don't see how much of you is dying on the inside. The truth is this: the strongest prisons are not built from walls and iron. They are built from fears, doubts, and lies we tell ourselves. The mask we wear. Most of us are experts in pretending. We wear masks of confidence, of positivity, of humor, hoping no one will see the weakness underneath. But the mask doesn't protect us. It only hides the bleeding. And the longer we hide, the deeper the wounds cut. When you bury weakness instead of facing it, you invite destruction in silence. The world doesn't even have to attack you. You collapse from within. How many times have you stayed quiet in a room when your heart wanted to scream? How many times have you said yes when your soul was begging to say no? How many times have you apologized for things that were never your fault, just because you couldn't bear the thought of someone disapproving of you? That is weakness, and it is killing you slowly. But here's the truth no one tells you. Weakness is not who you are. It is a disease of the mind. It is learned. It is planted in you by pain, by rejection, by betrayal, by a world that taught you to shrink so others could feel bigger. And if weakness can be learned, then strength can be learned too. The silent collapse. A weak mindset doesn't destroy your life overnight. It destroys you silently, piece by piece. It takes away your voice until you no longer speak your truth. It strips away your confidence until you can't even look in the mirror without doubt. It blinds you to your own worth until you start measuring your value in the smiles and nods of others. I have seen people, good, beautiful people, collapse this way. They weren't broken by enemies. They weren't crushed by storms. They were broken by their own surrender, by the belief that they had no power to change. And when they finally realized it, it was too late. Their relationships were shattered. Their dreams had died. Their hearts had grown numb. That is why this knowledge matters. Because the fight for your life is not out there in the world. It is inside your own mind. Why you must face this truth? There are 8 signs of a weak mindset. 8 cracks in the armor of the soul. If you don't see them, they will own you. They will shape your choices, your relationships, your future. They will drag you down until one day you realize you no longer recognize yourself. But if you can see them, if you can face them with honesty, you can break them. You can destroy the weakness before it destroys you. This is not about pretending to be strong. This is about becoming strong. Not strong in appearance, but strong in truth. Strong in silence. Strong in ways that cannot be broken. This is not a journey of comfort. It is not easy, but it is real, and it is worth it. The emotional weight of weakness. Think about the times you've lain awake at night, replaying conversations in your head, punishing yourself for what you said or didn't say. Think about how you've compared yourself to others, wishing you had their courage, their beauty, their strength. Think about how you've bent yourself out of shape just to be accepted, only to feel empty anyway. That is the cost of weakness. It doesn't just steal your happiness. It steals your identity. Weakness convinces you that you are unworthy of love, that your dreams are too big for someone like you, that you must settle for less because asking for more will only end in disappointment. But deep down, you know this is a lie, because every time you see someone rise, every time you witness someone living boldly, there's a part of you that aches, not out of envy, but out of recognition. You know you were meant for more. You know that strength lives inside you, even if it's been buried under years of fear. A promise. So here's my promise to you. By the end of this journey, you will see weakness for what it really is, not a permanent part of you, but a poison you can purge. You will learn the 8 signs that betray a weak mindset, and more importantly, you will learn how to eliminate them before they destroy you. And when you do, you will rise, not as the world expects you to rise, but as you were always meant to, quietly, steadily, unbreakably. Because strength is not about shouting. It is not about proving. It is not about pretending. Strength is about standing when everything inside you wants to fall. It is about choosing yourself when no one else will. It is about finding your voice, even if it shakes. Weakness whispers, "You can't." Strength whispers back, "Watch me." And this journey begins now. The illusion of openness and the prison of reactivity. The first sign, the illusion of openness. There is a belief many of us carry, often without question, that being open with everyone, pouring our hearts out, sharing every thought, every wound, every secret, is somehow strength. We are told it makes us honest. We are told it makes us brave. We are told it makes us real. But here's the truth that cuts deeper than we'd like to admit. Openness is not always strength. Sometimes it is surrender. Think about the moments you've shared too much with people who never truly valued you. You exposed your heart, your dreams, your fears, believing they would understand, believing they would protect what you gave them. But instead, what happened? They used it against you. They gossiped about you. They pulled away from you. They judged you quietly, leaving you wondering if maybe you should never have spoken at all. And so, you learn to regret your own honesty. This is what weakness does. It convinces you that if you show enough of yourself, if you give people all your truths, then maybe, just maybe, you will finally be loved. But what actually happens is the opposite. The more you reveal, the more you hand others the power to hurt you. It doesn't mean you should never be vulnerable. Vulnerability in the right hands, with the right hearts, is healing. But scattering your soul in every direction, exposing your fears to people who haven't earned the right to hold them, that is not strength. That is desperation. Strong minds know this. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is wisdom. Silence is safety. When you learn to hold back, when you learn to keep certain pieces of yourself sacred, you protect your soul. Not everyone deserves access to your depths. Not everyone has earned the right to hear your story. The illusion of openness is dangerous because it teaches you to believe that oversharing equals intimacy. But real intimacy is not about volume. It is about trust, patience, and time. The truth is this. Those who rush to expose themselves completely are often the ones most terrified of being abandoned. If you've been there, if you've felt the sting of giving too much of yourself to people who never deserved it, you know the wound it leaves. But you also know this. You are allowed to protect your soul. You are allowed to keep certain parts of yourself private. You are allowed to choose who gets to see the real you. And that choice, my friend, is not weakness. It is power. The second sign, emotional reactivity. The second sign of weakness is just as dangerous and just as invisible. It is emotional reactivity, the habit of letting your feelings control you instead of the other way around. We've all felt it. The heat rising in our chest when someone disrespects us. The sting of fear when things don't go as planned. The helpless anger when we feel misunderstood. And in those moments, we'll lash out. We say words we don't mean. We make decisions we regret. We give others the power to steer our lives by controlling our emotions. You may believe that expressing your emotions in raw, unfiltered ways makes you real. That if you're angry, you should show it. If you're afraid, you should act on it. If you're hurt, you should let the world know. But here's the truth. Unfiltered emotion is not authenticity. It is instability. Every time you explode in anger, every time you break down in fear, every time you let your pain dictate your actions, you are handing your power to the very people who know how to press your buttons. They don't even need to attack you directly. All they need to do is trigger you, and you will do the rest. But here's where it gets deeper. Reactivity doesn't just destroy relationships, it destroys you. Because every time you give into it, you reinforce the belief that you are not in control of yourself. And that belief becomes a cage. You start to see yourself as someone who can't help it, who is destined to be ruled by emotions. And that lie keeps you trapped. But the truth, you are not your emotions. You are not your anger. You are not your fear. You are the one who observes them. You are the one who decides what to do with them. Imagine for a moment if you could feel the storm inside you and still stand calm. Imagine if you could hear the insults, face the disrespect, endure the doubt, and still hold your ground without exploding, without breaking, without surrendering. That is strength. That is mastery. It doesn't mean you never feel anger. It doesn't mean you never feel fear. It means you refuse to let those feelings own you. You feel them, you breathe through them, and you choose your response with clarity. That is emotional power. And here's the thing. People expect you to react. They expect you to snap. They expect you to lose control. When you don't, when you remain steady in the storm, you disarm them completely. Their insults fall flat. Their provocations lose meaning. Their control over you evaporates. And suddenly, you are no longer the one at their mercy. They are at yours. The illusion of openness and emotional reactivity. They may look different, but they are born from the same root. Fear. The fear of not being loved makes you overshare, hoping someone will accept you. The fear of not being respected makes you explode, hoping someone will hear you. Both fears are lies, and both destroy you if you let them. Strength begins when you stop feeding those fears, when you stop handing people the keys to your heart and mind, when you realize that not everyone. The third sign, the fear of isolation. There is a silence most people cannot bear. It is the silence of an empty room where no voices call your name, no one waits for you, no footsteps echo beside yours. For some, this silence feels like death itself. The fear of being alone is one of the deepest wounds a soul can carry. It comes from childhood memories of being left behind, from heartbreaks that hollowed us out, from nights when we reached for someone and found nothing but emptiness. And so, we grow desperate to escape it. We cling to people, to groups, to approval, anything that keeps us from facing ourselves in solitude. But here's the cruel truth. In running from isolation, you enslave yourself. You will bend your beliefs, betray your values, silence your voice, all just to avoid being cast aside. And in that surrender, you lose yourself piece by piece. You've seen this before. The friend who laughs at jokes they don't find funny, just to stay included. The lover who swallows their pride, begging for scraps of affection, just to avoid abandonment. The colleague who agrees with everything, even what they know is wrong, just to be accepted. They are not living. They are surviving. And survival, when chained to the fear of isolation, is nothing but a slow death of the spirit. But solitude is not the enemy. Solitude is the fire that forges you. It is in the empty spaces where you meet your real self, stripped of masks and performances. Alone, there is no audience to please. Alone, there is no approval to win. Alone, there is only you, and that truth terrifies the weak mind. Yet the strongest souls, the ones who shape history, are those who learn to stand in silence without trembling. They walk alone, not because they cannot belong, but because they refuse to belong at the cost of their soul. When you embrace solitude, you no longer chase inclusion. You no longer beg for acceptance. You no longer fear rejection, because you understand you are enough even when no one claps for you. The fear of isolation is the chain that keeps people small, but the embrace of solitude is the crown that makes them unshakable. The fourth sign, the need for approval. If the fear of isolation is a chain, then the hunger for approval is the leash that pulls you wherever others want you to go. You know the feeling, that rush in your chest when someone praises you, that ache of disappointment when someone criticizes you, that desperate hunger to be liked, accepted, validated. It feels like oxygen, and without it, you suffocate. But here's the truth you may not want to face. The need for approval is not love. It is a prison, and the bars are built from your own doubts about your worth. Think of how much you have given up chasing approval. How many times have you smiled when you wanted to cry, just to appear strong? How many times have you said yes when you wanted to scream no, just to avoid disappointing someone? How many times have you twisted yourself into someone else's idea of enough, only to look in a mirror and realize you no longer recognize the face staring back at you? The tragedy of this hunger is that it never ends. You can receive 10 compliments, 100 smiles, 1,000 nods, and still, one criticism will crush you. Because approval does not fill the void. It only feeds it, making you hungrier with each bite. And the world? The world knows this. Manipulators, abusers, even friends and family, whether they realize it or not, learn quickly how to control the person who craves validation. They give approval as reward, withhold it as punishment, until you are dancing for their applause, like a puppet on invisible strings. The weak mindset cannot survive without approval, but the strong mindset does not chase it. The strong mindset learns that worth is not measured in the claps of others, but in the quiet knowing of the self. And here is the paradox. When you stop chasing approval, when you stop begging for validation, when you stop apologizing for your existence, people begin to respect you more. Because nothing is more magnetic than someone who does not need to be desired. Approval is sweet, but it is fleeting. Self-worth, when built from within, is eternal. Isolation and approval, the two faces of fear. Look closely, and you will see that these two weaknesses are tied to the same root. The fear of being alone pushes you into the arms of approval. The hunger for approval makes you terrified of being alone. It is a cycle, a cruel, endless circle. And most people live their entire lives inside it. They join groups that drain their spirit just to avoid isolation. They chase applause from people who don't even care about them, just to feel worthy. They spend their entire lives molding themselves into someone else's idea of acceptable, and in the end, they die without ever having truly lived. But you don't have to live this way. There is another path, a harder one, yes, but the only one that leads to freedom. The path where you walk alone if you must, where you embrace solitude, not as punishment, but as strength. The path where you stop begging for applause and start clapping for yourself, where you build worth that no one can take away. The path where you realize that true belonging does not come from losing yourself to be accepted, but from being so fully yourself that those who resonate with your truth are drawn to you naturally. This path is narrow. Few walk it, but those who... The fifth sign, blame shifting. There's a moment we all know too well. A mistake is made. Something falls apart. A dream collapses. A relationship shatters. A plan fails. And instead of standing in the ruins and owning the truth, the weak mind looks for someone, anyone, to carry the weight of its shame. This isn't my fault. If they hadn't done this, if life wasn't against me, blame becomes the shield. But it is not protection. It is poison. Every time you point the finger away from yourself, you are handing away a piece of your power. You are telling the world, I am not in control. I am a victim. My life belongs to forces outside of me. And the world believes you. Once people see that you cannot hold your own mistakes, they lose faith in you. They stop trusting you. They stop respecting you. They see the cracks in your armor, the fractures in your soul. I've seen this countless times. Friendships broken because someone refused to admit they were wrong. Lovers turned cold because instead of apology, they offered excuses. Families divided because every mistake became a battlefield of accusations. Blame doesn't protect relationships. It corrodes them, slowly, silently, until the bond is nothing but ash. But the deeper tragedy is what blame does to you. Because every time you run from responsibility, you are teaching yourself to fear the truth. And a mind that fears truth can never grow, can never heal, can never rise. It remains small, fragile, and brittle. Weakness hides behind excuses. Strength walks forward with ownership. The truth is harsh. Yes, sometimes you will fail. Sometimes you will be wrong. Sometimes you will cause pain, even when you didn't mean to. But facing that truth, holding it with steady hands, refusing to run from it, that is what builds unshakable power. Because once you own your mistakes, no one can use them against you. You become untouchable. You take the poison out of their weapon. You reclaim the ground that blame stole from you. Blame is easy. Ownership is brutal. But only ownership will set you free. The sixth sign, rigidity. If blame is poison, rigidity is a prison. It is the refusal to bend, the stubborn clinging to beliefs, opinions, and ways of thinking, even when they no longer serve you. The weak mind convinces itself that to never change is to be strong, that to admit new truths is to betray the old ones, that to shift is to be fragile. But the world is not still. It is alive, moving, twisting with every moment. And those who refuse to adapt are left behind. I've seen it with my own eyes. People who cling to dogma, who argue endlessly to prove themselves right, who reject every new perspective because it threatens their pride. And what happens? They become isolated. They burn bridges. They stop growing. They wither while the world moves on. Rigidity feels like strength, but it is only fear wearing a mask. Fear of being wrong. Fear of letting go. Fear of stepping into the unknown. But the truth? True strength is not in clinging. It is in flowing. It is in having the courage to evolve. Think of a tree in a storm. The rigid tree, unbending, snaps under the wind. The flexible tree sways, bends, moves with the storm, and when the storm passes, it still stands. Your mind is no different. If you lock yourself into one way of seeing the world, one way of believing, one way of living, you will break. You will miss opportunities. You will fall into traps. You will become predictable and easy to control. But if you remain flexible, if you allow yourself to shift, to adapt, to see from new angles, you cannot be cornered. You cannot be broken. You cannot be controlled. Weakness clings to certainty because it is terrified of change. Strength embraces uncertainty because it knows change is where growth lives. The silent destruction, blame, and rigidity, they often walk hand in hand. The one who refuses to take responsibility is usually the one who refuses to change. They will justify, defend, and argue until their last breath, because admitting fault means admitting they must grow. And growth terrifies them. But here's the brutal truth. Refusing growth does not stop the world from moving. Life will drag you forward whether you resist or not. And those who refuse to adapt will not survive its storms. Blame shifting isolates you from others. Rigidity isolates you from yourself. And together, they create a life of quiet decay. A life where you're always pointing at others, always clinging to the past, always missing the chance to step into your own future. But the path to power is clear. Take responsibility, even when it hurts. Adapt, even when it scares you. Own your truth. Bend with the storm. Refuse to let pride and fear keep you in chains. Because the weak mind collapses under the weight of blame and rigidity. But the strong mind rises, not because it never falls, but because it learns, it shifts, it evolves, and it keeps moving forward. The seventh sign, ignoring feedback. There is a dangerous silence that many mistake for strength, the refusal to listen. Some believe that shutting out criticism, closing their ears to advice, and rejecting the voices of others makes them powerful. They say, I don't need anyone. I already know. But what they do not see is that arrogance blinds. The mind that ignores all feedback builds a fortress so thick, even truth cannot enter. And in that fortress, you may feel safe, but you're slowly starving. Because life is always speaking, through people, through failure, through pain. If you silence every voice but your own, you stop learning. You stop growing. You begin to stumble blindly while the world moves around you. But there is another danger, just as great, the opposite extreme. The one who swallows every word spoken to them, who bends to every opinion, who clings desperately to every piece of advice in search of approval. This, too, is weakness, because in trying to listen to everyone, you lose yourself. You let your identity dissolve in the noise of others. The strong mind does not live in either extreme. It listens, but it listens with discernment. It absorbs truth, discards poison, and refuses to let anyone else own its decisions. The weak mindset either drowns in arrogance or disappears in dependency. The strong mindset stands firm, open yet unmoved, steady in its own power. The eighth sign, overestimating others. There is one more weakness, and it hides in plain sight. It is the habit of building others into giants while shrinking yourself into nothing. You felt it before. You look at someone you admire, their success, their strength, their beauty, their influence, and something inside you whispers, they are untouchable. They are more than you could ever be. But this is a lie. No one is untouchable. No one is flawless. No one is beyond breaking. When you overestimate others, you give away your power before the battle even begins. You hesitate. You doubt yourself. You copy their moves, imitate their words, lower yourself in comparison. And in that lowering, you chain yourself. I have seen people bow to illusions. They look at leaders, celebrities, rivals, even friends, and believe they are invincible. But I've also seen those same giants fall. I've seen their cracks, their secrets, their fears. And the truth is always the same. They are human, just like you. The weak mind worships others until it forgets its own strength. The strong mind sees clearly, without envy, without fear, without idolization. It recognizes that everyone bleeds. Everyone hides scars. Everyone has fractures. When you stop overestimating others, you stop underestimating yourself. And that balance, that clarity, gives you the power to stand equal, unshaken, and ready. 8 signs, 8 cracks in the armor of the human spirit. And perhaps, as you've read these, you've felt the sting of recognition. Perhaps you've seen yourself in the fear of isolation, in the hunger for approval, in the instinct to blame, in the rigid refusal to bend. If so, let me tell you this. It does not mean you are weak forever. It does not mean you are doomed. It means you are human. And being human means you have the power to change. The greatest battle you will ever fight is not against enemies outside. It is against the weakness within. That weakness is quiet, invisible, but deadly. It whispers lies that keep you small. It convinces you that you cannot rise. It keeps you chained to illusions. But mastery begins the moment you face those lies with truth. The moment you stop pretending. The moment you decide, no more. No more giving away my power through oversharing. No more losing control to anger and fear. No more chasing approval like a starving child. No more hiding behind blame or clinging to rigidity or shutting out the truths that could set me free. No more bowing to illusions of giants while forgetting my own strength. The path is not easy. It demands honesty that cuts like a blade. It demands solitude that feels like fire. It demands responsibility, discipline, and the courage to see yourself not as you wish to be, but as you are. But if you walk it, if you cut away weakness with steady hands, you will rise into a strength so deep, so silent, so unshakable, that nothing and no one can take it from you. This strength is not loud. It does not beg for applause. It does not need to be seen. It is the strength of the storm that moves mountains in silence. The strength of a heart that has learned to endure. The strength of a mind that is no longer its own enemy. And once you reach it, you will understand true power is not about control over others. It is about control over yourself. True mastery is not about defeating enemies outside. It is about defeating the weakness within. When you do, you become untouchable. You become eternal. You become the quiet force that shapes every room, every battle, every life you touch. This is the final truth. The mastery of the weak mindset is the birth of unbreakable power. And that power, once yours, will never leave you.